At Eastwood High, fitting in meant everything. You either had the latest sneakers, the newest iPhone, or you were invisible. For most students, keeping up wasn't a choice, it was survival. And if you couldn't, well, they made sure you paid the price for being different. Emma Carter was one of those kids who didn't quite fit. Not because she wasn't smart. In fact, she was top of her class. Not because she wasn't kind. She always smiled at the janitor and offered her lunch when someone forgot theirs. But in a school where image was currency, Emma was broke. Every morning, she'd walk into school holding cracked, old Android phone. The screen was so shattered it looked like spider webs. There was no fancy case, no pop socket, no trending apps. Her backpack was secondhand, her jeans slightly faded, and her shoes were the kind you'd never see in a TikTok haul. But Emma never seemed to mind. She kept her head high, laughed at her own jokes, and kept to herself. But high school has a way of sniffing out anyone who's different and magnifying it under a cruel spotlight. It started in math class. "Hey, Emma," one of the popular girls, Maddie, said with a smirk, "is that phone even from this century?" The classroom erupted in snickers. Emma looked up from her notebook, blinking. "It still works," she said quietly. "Oh my God," she says, "it still works." Maddie mocked, mimicking her voice. That lunchtime, it got worse. Emma was sitting alone on the edge of the courtyard, reading a book while eating her homemade sandwich. She didn't hear them approach. A group of four, Maddie, Tyler, Brianna, and Josh, came up laughing, filming with their phones. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Emma, and this is her fossil," Josh announced, zooming in on her phone. Emma looked up confused. "Are you filming me?" "Don't worry," Brianna chimed in. "We're just making history. Literally, that phone belongs in a museum." More laughter. The clip would go viral later on the school's private Snapchat group. #PoorGirlChronicles. They captioned it. Emma didn't cry. Not then. She just put her phone back into her bag and quietly packed up her lunch. She walked away, shoulders slightly hunched, but still silent. Some might call it grace. Others might say it was numbness. But Emma refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. The truth was, Emma had money saved. She worked weekends at the local diner and did odd jobs for neighbors, babysitting, walking dogs, tutoring. She'd been saving for months. But the money wasn't for a new phone, not for clothes, not for popularity. It was for something else, something nobody knew. But in high school, no one cares about your reasons. They only care about your rankings, social, digital, and visual. Emma, with her scratched-up screen and thrift store hoodie, was at the bottom. A week later, the jokes continued. Tyler slid a fake rotary phone into her locker with a note that said, "Upgrade, winky face." Someone photoshopped her into an 80s commercial holding a brick phone. Laughter followed her like a shadow. But she still walked the halls calmly, as if it didn't touch her. What they didn't know was this. Emma had learned a long time ago that people's laughter says more about them than it does about you. She also knew that the loudest people were often the loneliest. So she chose silence. She chose to keep her focus on the things that mattered, her grades, her goals, and, most of all, her heart, because behind that cheap phone was a decision, one she had made just 2 weeks earlier. Her childhood friend Lily had come to her in tears. Her dad had just lost his job. Her mom was sick, and their savings were gone. They were behind on rent. Food was low, and worst of all, they couldn't afford her mom's medication. Emma didn't even hesitate. She went home, pulled out the small metal box under her bed, and gave Lily every cent she had saved. $327.50. Gone in one night. All she said was, "You'd do the same for me?" But no one else knew that. To everyone else, she was still that girl with the broken phone. Still the target. Still the joke. But as you're about to find out, some stories don't end where you think they will. Some hearts are bigger than screens. And sometimes, the most broken things hold the strongest light. So next time you see someone who looks like they're struggling, remember, the cracks you see might just be covering up something gold. Because in Emma's case, they were. And soon, the whole world would know it. The thing about judgment is, it always assumes. It sees the surface, the cracked phone, the thrift store hoodie, the quiet girl, and it builds a story without asking a single question. That's exactly what happened to Emma Carter. To her classmates, Emma was a girl with a fossil phone, the punchline to a running joke. They mocked her screen, her style, and even her lunch. It became a game. They laughed. They filmed. They posted. Emma, meanwhile, just kept walking. But behind every cracked screen is a story. And Emma's? It wasn't what they expected. 2 weeks before the joke started, Emma sat in her small bedroom after a long shift at the local diner. She worked weekends after school hours and picked up every extra shift she could. Not because she loved the job. Slinging pancakes and washing syrup off tables wasn't glamorous. But because she had a goal. She wanted a new phone, not just for herself, but because she was tired of people staring when she pulled out her ancient Android. She wanted to take better notes, join the school group chats, and stop feeling like she didn't belong. She opened her savings tin, a rusty old Altoids box she kept under her bed. Inside were $327.50. Carefully counted, sorted, and protected like treasure. To Emma, it was treasure. It meant weeks of working, saying no to fast food, skipping the movies, and resisting every sale. She smiled to herself. "Just one more week," she whispered. But then Lily called. Lily and Emma weren't close anymore. Not since middle school, but there was a time when they'd been inseparable. Sleepovers, shared secrets, scraped knees. Life drifted them apart, but Emma still remembered how Lily used to laugh, so hard she'd snort, how she always saved the red Skittles for Emma, how they used to dream of going to college together and changing the world. That night, Lily's voice shook on the other end of the line. "Emma, I didn't know who else to call." Her dad had been laid off. Her mom was sick, something with the kidneys, and the bills were piling up. Medication wasn't covered. Rent was overdue. The fridge was nearly empty. Lily had tried to stay strong, but the cracks were showing. Emma didn't ask how much they needed. She didn't calculate. She didn't pause. She just said, "Come over." That night, Emma emptied her savings tin. All of it. No conditions. No promises. No, "pay me back later." Just a small brown envelope. Sealed with tape. Handed over quietly with the words, "You do the same for me." Lily cried. She tried to refuse. But Emma insisted. "I can always save again. But your mom? She needs help now." No one else knew. Emma didn't post about it. She didn't tell her teachers. She didn't even tell her mom, who would have scolded her for giving away money she worked so hard for. Emma just went back to school on Monday like nothing happened. Back to the crack screen, the worn-out charger, the group messages she couldn't join because her phone couldn't handle the app. And, of course, back to the mockery. The jokes hit harder that week. Someone made a meme out of her during gym class. Another person airdropped a photo of her phone to the whole class, captioned, "She's texting from the Stone Age." Emma didn't flinch, but something inside her cracked a little, just like her phone screen. She didn't regret helping Lily, not for a second, but kindness, when done in silence, can sometimes feel lonely. She wondered if anyone would ever understand why she chose someone else over herself. But the truth has a way of showing up, especially when it's rooted in love. 1 week later, during a school-wide assembly about empathy and community, the principal asked if anyone wanted to share a story. To everyone's surprise, Lily stood up. Her voice trembled. Her eyes welled. But she spoke. She didn't name Emma. She didn't have to. Everyone knew. She told the story of a classmate who gave up everything to help a family in crisis. How that act of generosity kept her mother alive. How it gave them enough hope to keep fighting. And how it reminded her that goodness still existed, not in headlines, but in quiet corners of everyday life. The auditorium went still, dead quiet, not a single whisper. Emma sat in the middle row, frozen. Her heart raced, her face flushed, her hands trembled. She wasn't used to being seen like this. And in that moment, for the first time, the kids who had laughed at her didn't know what to say. Their smirks faded, their phones lowered, their eyes shifted with guilt. Suddenly, The cracked screen wasn't funny anymore. Emma didn't need applause. She didn't crave recognition. But knowing that someone finally saw her why, that was enough. Later that day, Lily hugged her in the hallway. Some of the students who mocked her came to apologize. A few teachers gave her long looks of quiet admiration. And when Emma opened her locker after sixth period, she found an anonymous note. "You have the newest heart in the room. That's what really matters." To the world, it was just a cracked phone. To Emma, it was proof that she had chosen compassion over image, purpose over pride, and no amount of giggles or gossip could take that away. What no one knew then was that this one choice, this quiet act of sacrifice, would change everything. But that's a story for another chapter. The truth has a strange way of slipping out, slowly, quietly, until one day, it's standing in the middle of the room, impossible to ignore. For weeks, Emma Carter had been the school's silent target. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She didn't fight back. And yet, she was unforgettable, not because of what she wore or what phone she used, but because of the way she carried pain without bitterness and kindness without reward. That day at the school assembly, when Lily stood up and told the story of a mysterious classmate who gave up her savings to help a struggling family, something shifted. She never said Emma's name. She didn't need to. You could hear the gasp ripple across the auditorium when Lily said, "She gave me $327.50. Every cent she had." A pause. She didn't ask for anything in return. Just said, "You do the same for me." Students began looking around, piecing the puzzle together. The dollar amount, the timing, the quiet generosity, the broken phone. All eyes landed on Emma. She sat there frozen, staring down at her hands, heart thudding in her chest. She hadn't asked for this. She didn't want it. But the truth had walked into the room and sat down beside her. That afternoon, whispers followed her, but this time, not the cruel kind. "I didn't know. Wait, was it really Emma? Dude, we made fun of her phone." The next day, Emma found something taped to her locker. It wasn't a prank. It was a small note written on torn notebook paper. "I'm sorry. You're better than all of us." Then another, "You inspired me today. Thank you." And then something else happened. Her inbox, the one tied to her school email, started filling up. "Hey, Emma, I have an idea for a fundraiser. Want to help? You're incredible. Would you be okay speaking at the community youth group? Can I write about you for the school paper?" It was overwhelming. She didn't know how to respond. For weeks, she'd been a ghost walking among people who saw only her flaws. Now, suddenly, she was a symbol of strength, of quiet generosity, of everything they weren't. Emma didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to do the right thing. But the truth had already begun echoing far beyond the classroom walls. That weekend, the story hit the school's Facebook page. One of the teachers, who had heard Lily's speech, wrote a heartfelt post about a student who chose compassion over cool. They didn't use Emma's name, but once again, they didn't have to. The post went viral. People shared it, commented, some even cried. Parents tagged their kids. Youth leaders used it in sermons. Teachers read it aloud in homeroom. And then the message came from the Eastwood Gazette, the local newspaper. They wanted to interview Emma. She almost said no. She didn't want attention. She didn't want to be a headline. But Lily gently encouraged her. "Emma," she said, "people need to know that kindness still exists. Maybe hearing your story will help someone else find their courage." And so, reluctantly, Emma agreed. The article came out the next Sunday. The title? More Than a Broken Phone. How a Quiet Teen Gave Everything to Save a Friend's Family. It featured her picture, no makeup, old hoodie, cracked phone still in hand, and a story that would touch thousands. In the days that followed, donations started pouring in, not just for Lily's family, but for others like them. Strangers wrote in from other towns. A local nonprofit offered Emma a scholarship. A woman from across the state sent a message saying, "You reminded me what humanity looks like." But perhaps the most surprising twist came from someone she never expected. Maddie. Yes, that Maddie. The girl who had started the teasing. who'd once called her phone a prehistoric fossil. She showed up at Emma's lunch table. Alone. She didn't bring her squad. She didn't bring sarcasm. Just red eyes and a shaking voice. "Emma, I was awful to you," she said, staring at the ground. "And you didn't deserve any of it." Emma looked up slowly. Maddie's lip trembled. "You could have humiliated me in front of the whole school. You had every reason to. But you didn't. And now, everyone looks up to you. Even me." A pause. "I'm really, really sorry." Emma didn't speak right away. She just nodded, then quietly said, "I forgive you." And that was it. No grand speeches. No revenge. Just quiet grace, the same way it started. From that moment on, something changed at Eastwood High. The jokes slowed down. Students started opening up. Acts of kindness began to ripple. Small at first, then bigger. A student-led charity club was born, and they asked Emma to be its first president. She called it the Crack Screen Project. Its mission? To remind people that what's on the outside never tells the full story, and that sometimes the strongest hearts live behind the most shattered glass. Emma never got that new phone. Not because she couldn't. She got offers, donations, even sponsorships. But she chose to keep the cracked one just a little longer. As a reminder, that kindness matters. That one choice can change everything. And that being different might just be your greatest power. For Emma Carter, the quiet girl once mocked for her outdated phone and simple clothes, the world had flipped upside down. And yet, as applause and admiration began to swirl around her, she felt something deeper rise. Not pride, not revenge, but purpose. Because this wasn't just about a moment anymore. It was about a mission. It all began the week after the story hit the local paper. Emma was invited to speak at a community event for youth leaders and educators. At first, she hesitated. She wasn't a public speaker. She didn't like the spotlight. But something inside her whispered, "You've come this far. Don't stop now." Standing behind that microphone, hands trembling, Emma looked out over the small crowd. Her voice cracked as she began. "I never planned to be noticed. I just saw someone I cared about struggling. And I did what felt right." The room was silent. You could feel it. That shift, that moment when a story becomes more than just words. When people see themselves in it. When hearts soften and minds open. After the event, a teacher approached her. "Have you ever thought about starting something?" "Like what?" Emma asked. "A movement, a club, a project, whatever you want to call it. Something that helps people the way you helped Lily." Emma didn't respond right away. But that night, as she stared at her cracked phone screen, she remembered what Maddie had said. "You could have humiliated me, but you chose kindness." And just like that, the idea was born. She called it the Crack Screen Project. It was simple at first, just a small group of students gathering in the school library on Thursdays, talking about how they could support classmates going through tough times. No fancy logos, no website, just heart. Their first mission? Operation Lunch Bag. Dozens of students had quietly been skipping meals. So the Crack Screen crew raised funds to provide free, discreet lunch bags every Friday. No questions asked. No names needed. Then came winter warmth, a coat drive for families in need. And then Study Buddy, tutoring for kids falling behind. Every week, their reach grew. Every week, more students joined. Emma watched it all unfold, not with ego, but awe, because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about them. About what was possible when kindness was louder than cruelty. Soon, local media picked up the story, not just with a feel-good headline, but because the movement was making real impact. A school counselor from the next town emailed Emma, "We've started our own version of Crack Screen." You lit the fire. That same week, a college in-state sent her an early invitation to their social entrepreneurship program. Full scholarship. No essay needed. Emma sat in her room, holding the letter, tears running down her cheeks. Not because of the college offer, but because it all started with a cracked phone and a choice to care. But with the rise came challenges. Not everyone was supportive. A few students started murmuring. She's just doing this for attention. She thinks she's better than us now. It's a popularity contest. Emma heard the whispers. They hurt, but this time she didn't shrink. Instead, she showed up the next Thursday, looked her team in the eye, and said, "They can say what they want, but if we let negativity stop us, we'll never grow. We're not here to impress anyone. We're here to help. Let's stay focused." The room clapped because they knew she meant it. And then came the day everything changed again. One morning, Emma walked into school and saw a flyer on the bulletin board. National Youth Impact Grant, seeking teen changemakers. Winners will receive funding to scale their projects nationwide. Emma stared at it for a long time. She didn't think she had a shot. The odds were insane. But her best friend Lily walked up beside her and smiled. "You changed my life with $327.50. Imagine what you could do with $50,000. That night, they worked on the application together. They didn't have fancy graphics. They didn't use big words. Just the story, the truth, and the plan. Weeks passed. No word. Until one Monday morning, Emma's phone buzzed. Yes, the crack one. An email popped up. "Dear Emma Carter, we are thrilled to inform you that you've been selected as one of 5 recipients of the 2025 Youth Impact Grant." She screamed, and for once, she didn't care who heard. With the funding, the Crack Screen Project grew beyond Eastwood High. They built a website, launched mentorship programs in 3 other schools, started a podcast called Behind the Screens, where teens shared untold stories of struggle and hope. Emma traveled to youth conferences, spoke on panels, even appeared in a short documentary. But no matter how big it got, she never forgot where it began. Not in a meeting room or a board pitch, but in a cafeteria, with laughter aimed at her phone, and a choice to love anyway. Emma Carter never became the most popular girl in school. She never cared about designer clothes. She still wore the same hoodie, but she became something else, something far greater. A spark, a bridge, a reminder that kindness doesn't need permission. It just needs courage. And that purpose isn't something you find. Sometimes it finds you right in the middle of your pain. It started with a laugh, a cruel joke about a girl's cracked phone, but it ended with a legacy that would outlive every whisper, every insult, every eye roll that tried to keep her small. Emma Carter didn't set out to change the world. She just wanted to help a friend. But the thing about purpose is, once it finds you, it doesn't let go. And long after the noise died down, her work spoke louder than ever. 2 years had passed since Emma first launched the Crack Screen Project. What began as a lunchtime gathering of misfits and silent hearts had grown into a nationwide movement. High schools across the country, from New York to New Mexico, had adopted their own cracked screen chapters. Teens who once felt invisible were now leaders, givers, builders. And Emma, she was still leading, not from some corner office, but from within. At just 19, she had deferred her college acceptance to focus full-time on expanding the organization, not for fame, not for followers, but because she knew what it felt like to be overlooked, and she never wanted another kid to feel that alone again. One afternoon, while visiting a school in Portland, Oregon, Emma met a boy named Mateo. He was quiet, twitchy, wore his hoodie like armor, reminded her of herself. After the student assembly, he approached her, eyes on the floor. "You probably don't remember me," he mumbled. Emma tilted her head. "Should I? I was one of the kids who made fun of you. Back then. Online." Emma's breath caught. It wasn't the first time someone had admitted it, but it still stung. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I was going through a lot. My brother was in jail. I was angry all the time. But your story, it made me want to be better. Now I volunteer here every week. I'm part of the Crack Screen team." Emma didn't say much. She just pulled him into a hug, because that's what healing sounds like. Not applause, but redemption. By the time Emma turned 21, the Crack Screen Project had touched over 200,000 lives through mental health workshops, food drives, tutoring programs, and emergency grants for students in crisis. Universities had begun studying their model, Nonprofits were reaching out for partnerships. Even social media platforms started highlighting their content, giving a spotlight to the quiet kindness most people scroll past. But Emma still lived simply, still used public transport, still wore that same old hoodie from high school on speaking days. A reminder of where she came from. You don't need a perfect image to make a real impact, she often said. You just need to care enough to show up. One day, she got an email from a high school student in a small Texas town. Her name was Joy. She wrote, "I've been thinking about ending my life. My parents are divorced. I get bullied every day. I felt invisible. But then I heard your podcast. I listened to the Lily story, and I cried because it made me realize maybe someone like me matters too. So thank you. You saved me, and you don't even know it." Emma wept in silence reading those words, because this was never about trends. It was never about going viral. It was about being seen and helping others feel the same. A year later, the Cracked Screen Foundation officially launched its college scholarship fund, awarding 10 students annually with full-ride scholarships to study social work, mental health, education, or nonprofit leadership. The only requirement? A story of compassion. It wasn't about grades or test scores. It was about heart. That same year, Emma stepped back from day-to-day operations. She appointed a diverse team of young leaders, most of whom had once been helped by the project. Because real legacy isn't about holding on. It's about passing it on. Now, years later, Emma Carter walks through life not as a celebrity, but as a symbol, a reminder that legacy isn't written in headlines. It's written in lunchrooms, where kids notice someone sitting alone and choose to sit beside them. It's written in text messages that say, "Hey, are you okay?" It's written in the decision to give when no one's watching. That's the kind of impact that outlives any app update or trend. One morning, Emma received a package in the mail. Inside was an old, cracked smartphone mounted in a glass display box. There was a note. This phone started it all. And now it sits in our office as a symbol that broken things can still build beautiful stories. The Cracked Screen team. Emma stared at it for a long time. That broken screen used to embarrass her. Now it reminded her of everything that could grow from pain, everything that could shine through a crack. Because as the Japanese say, the cracks are where the light gets in. So what is the legacy of Emma Carter? It's not just an organization. It's not just a movement. It's a quiet revolution of students standing up, speaking out, and loving louder than the world taught them to. It's every young person who chose kindness over cruelty. It's every moment when someone says, "Because of her, I didn't give up." That's the power of one person, one choice, one act of grace that echoes for generations. So the next time someone laughs at you, underestimates you, or tells you that you're not enough, just remember, you don't need the newest phone to have the strongest voice. You just need the courage to use it.